Hello, and welcome to this session on SFX Basic Troubleshooting. My name is Carrie Bartels, and I'm a trainer in Ex-Libris North America. In this session, we'll first do a brief review of the SFX process that happens behind the scenes, in particular how the OpenURL factors into that process and where issues can arise. Then we'll cover the OpenURL generator tool that's available in the SFX Center. And we'll also talk about how to troubleshoot missing and broken links, debug issues, and how to report issues to support. By the end of this session, you'll have an understanding for how to troubleshoot errors such as missing target links in the SFX menu or broken links, debug issues using the SFX debug tool, and log a support case for any issues that come up, and know what information to include in the case that will be helpful to the support team. Before we dive into the details, let's briefly talk about a couple of general things that will be helpful to know for this session. The tools that we'll talk about in this session can be found in the SFX Admin Center in the Data Management area in the Troubleshooting section. So while we go over the tools in the Admin Center that focus on troubleshooting, I'd also like to go over the link resolution process and some issues that you may see from time to time. Now, you may remember this slide on the link resolution process from the SFX introduction presentation. But this time, let's take a look at each point to see where things can possibly break down. So when the source generates an OpenURL, SFX relies on that OpenURL in order to continue on. In some cases, when SFX fails to resolve the link, it's because the source passed SFX an OpenURL that was either constructed incorrectly or didn't have enough information in it in order for SFX to identify the article or object. That OpenURL that's sent to the SFX server and the data from the OpenURL is augmented with information. So SFX gathers this metadata and generates what's called a context object. Using that object, SFX looks up the services that are available. It doesn't happen often, but the information that is augmented may be outdated. SFX trusts the information that the source gives it. It's not validating the citation data in this process, just adding to it if it can. Once SFX has identified potential providers, it then uses the thresholds to determine whether or not the article itself is available. Remember that the thresholds determine what's available. So if they are configured incorrectly, they're going to affect what's displayed on the SFX menu. When the user clicks on one of the links in the SFX menu, a target URL is generated, and the user is brought to the full text of the article. Remember that this target OpenURL is different than the source OpenURL. The target URL contains additional augmented data, and it can also contain your institution's authentication information. If you're able to see the link in the menu, but the link doesn't work, there may be an issue with the way that the target URL is constructed or your linking parameters. It could also be that though the vendor reported to us that they had the content initially, for some reason it's no longer on their site, or there's maybe another issue with the vendor's content. If your user is off-site, another issue might be with your proxy configuration. So now let's talk about OpenURLs and the OpenURL generator tool that's available in the Admin Center. The OpenURL is essentially a URL that's used to transfer metadata, so article, journal, or ebook information, for example, from one information provider to another. The National Information Standard Organization, NISO, maintains the OpenURL standard, allowing communication between different data providers, but there are sections of the OpenURL that are vendor-specific. SFX handles two types of OpenURLs. We had mentioned the source OpenURL, which is from the vendor, and the target URL, which SFX generates. We've worked with vendors to make sure that we interpret their OpenURL correctly, and we use the data in the source OpenURL to generate the target URL, OpenURL, which makes the request from the target for full text, for an abstract, and so on. So let's look at a couple of ways for how you can see the OpenURL that's being sent. One way to see the OpenURL is in the address or URL field in your browser. So let me show you an example of that. So if we go to an SFX menu, here's the OpenURL that actually exists in the address bar or the URL bar of the browser. However, by the time you've clicked on the link, you might have been redirected through your proxy, so taking the link from the URL in the browser doesn't always work. Using an example of Primo as the source, another way to see the open URL is, and this is using Internet Explorer, you can right-click on the open source in a new window, and actually if I mouse over that, you'll see the open URL as well. But if I right-click, I can click on Copy Shortcut, and then paste it into an email or text editor. If you're viewing the SFX menu in Internet Explorer, you can right-click, and let me actually show you this. Here's an SFX menu, and I'm using Internet Explorer as my browser. You can right-click just anywhere in the menu window and select Properties. And that will allow you to view the open URL from there, and you can see all of the different metadata that's contained in that open URL. If you're using Firefox, let me show you an example of that using the slides. Using Primo as an example, you can right-click on Open Source in New Window and click Copy Link Location, and from there paste it into an email or text editor as well. Other ways to view the open URL are listed in the SFX General Users Guide in the section on troubleshooting. This is what one of our open URLs looks like, and I'm not going to explain every single piece of it, but just point out a few things. You'll notice that it starts with and it contains the SFX base URL. So this is, in this example, a target URL. It also contains information from the source system, in this case Primo, and we'll see that prefaced with an SID, source ID, and we'll see that that is coming from Primo. It helps the database on the receiving end interpret the open URL by knowing which source it's coming from. Other important fields here are the genre, the article title, A title equals, that's article title, the journal title, J title equals journal title, so here's the title of the journal that the article is contained in. AU equals author, so this is the author information. The date of the publication, the volume, and the issue we see here. Pagination information, S page stands for start page, E page stands for end page. And we have, in total, the pages are 29 for this entire article. And then we also have the ISSN. All of this information contained in the open URL needs to be correct in order for this open URL to work. When it's not working the way it should, try taking a quick look at the open URL to see if it has all of the correct information in it. Don't worry too much about if it's formed properly or spend time looking at what should be in every field. The key is just not to be intimidated by this giant link. Just check to see if the obvious information is correct and makes sense. Also, if you're already authenticated, you could take this link, this open URL, and put it directly into a new browser window, and you should get the same result as the original link. In the SFX Admin Center, we have an open URL generator, which opens up in a separate window. You can use this to reconstruct an open URL based on the information that you have. And when you look at the open URL that's constructed, it may also help you identify issues or things that need to be corrected in the open URL. So for example, perhaps there's important metadata such as an ISSN or an article page number that's missing from the open URL or incorrect in the open URL. So let's actually go to SFX Admin Center at this point. And I have my SFX Admin Center right here. We're in Data Management, and we're going into the Troubleshooting section, the Open URL Generator. And I'll have a new window that displays to me. So this is where I can indicate any metadata for the particular article I'm looking for, and then it will generate the SFX menu for that, and I can also see the open URL for it as well. And the open URL will have the data that I input into this form. So just to give you an example, A title stands for article title, so I'm going to enter the article title here. J title stands for journal title, so I know that this particular article is in Advances in Astronomy. You enter as much or as little information as you have. I do happen to have the ISSN for this journal, so I'll plug that in. I also have a year for the article. I do not have a month or a day, so I'm just going to input the year. I'm just inputting the information that I have. And then I also happen to have the author's last name and first name. I can also limit this to a particular service type as well. So if I just want full text resources, I can indicate that by clicking on the checkbox for full text. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and click on View Open URL. By doing that, that will actually show me the open URL that's generated for this. So if I click on Submit, it will open a new window. And here is the open URL. And you'll see all of the pieces of metadata that I had plugged into the form. You will see that in this open URL. For instance, here's the article title. Here's the author's name, the date, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and close this up. One of the options I do have from here, though, before I close it up, is I can click on this link here to go to the URL, and that will generate the SFX menu. Another way to do that is to uncheck View Open URL from the Open URL generator. Click on Submit. That, again, will open up a new window. And here is the SFX menu that displays for that particular article. And these are the targets and target services that I have active in my SFX instance. So they're displaying here in the menu. I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and I'll close up the Open URL Generator tool as well. Let's go back to the slides. And let's look now at some issues that may come up from time to time, in particular missing or broken links in the SFX menu. The first issue we'll look at is there may be a target link that is not displaying in the SFX menu, and you believe it should. So for example, you know that you subscribe to the journal in EBSCO, and you expect to have an EBSCO link in the full text display in the SFX menu, but it's not there. So what are some possibilities for why we don't see an EBSCO link in the SFX menu when we expect it should be there? First of all, the threshold may be filtering it out. Maybe the article is from 1998 and your EBSCO coverage doesn't go back that far and your threshold is actually configured correctly. Or maybe 1998 is covered in your subscription, but the threshold in SFX needs to be adjusted to match your institution's subscription. So to check the threshold for the object, you can search for the object directly in the SFX Admin Center, or you can look for the publication in the SFX A to Z list. And we'll talk more about the A to Z list in a separate session. In the A to Z list, we can see all of the publications that are active and also see the threshold dates or coverage dates for the publication. So it's a great way to check to see if SFX has the correct information to work with. If it doesn't, then you can update the threshold in the Admin Center. Another possibility is that the target, the service, or the object isn't active for some reason. So you can search for the target or the object or the service, for instance, in the SFX Admin Center, just to ensure that all three levels are activated as needed. And just a reminder, the target level, the target service level, and the object portfolio levels all need to be activated in order for the resource to display in the SFX menu. Or the article may not be available on the vendor's site, and this can happen for a variety of reasons. Remember that SFX works at the journal level. So if the journal is available and the article is within the coverage dates for the journal, SFX is going to assume that that specific article is there on the vendor site. One of the first steps to take is to search for the article with the information that you have and search for that article on the vendor's site and confirm that it's there. If it's not, SFX then won't be able to find it either. And then you can ask the vendor directly why it's not on their site. At this point, if you still can't identify what's wrong, you can at any point log a support case and ask us for help. Near the end of the presentation, I'll go over the information to include in those support cases. The other type of issue we sometimes see is that everything looks great in the SFX menu, so the target links all appear as they should in the menu, but when you click on one of those links, you don't get the article you're looking for, or perhaps you get a message indicating that the article wasn't found. So in that case, why is the link broken? The most common causes for this situation are that the vendor site may be down, or the article may not be available on the vendor site. Occasionally we see an error like this, like we just saw on the previous slide, because we have the complete citation information for the vendor's holdings, but the vendor may be in the process of moving all of their content onto a new platform. So not all of their content is there yet on the vendor's new platform, so that's why we end up with an article cannot be found. So it may be worth checking the vendor site just to make sure that the site is up and running, and search for the article there to make sure it's really available on the vendor's site. You can look at the data in the open URL and try to search for the publication using just that information. If you can't find the article with the information provided in the open URL, see if providing additional information for the article will do the trick. Sometimes, and again, this is much less common, a less common issue is that the linking parameters may be configured incorrectly. And if this is the case, you're really going to notice that nothing works from the vendor. And this is usually more common during implementation, where we're just getting everything set up, as vendors usually don't like to change login information on you. You'll want to review the linking parameters that you've included for the target and the target service in the SFX Admin Center and talk to your vendor if there's an issue. Another possibility is that the open URL coming from the source doesn't have the correct information, or it doesn't have enough metadata in it to find the article. Remember that SFX relies on the source to provide the information it needs to create the link to the target. It doesn't validate it. And usually the information we use to augment the data depends on the correctness of key elements in the source open URL. So again, check the vendor site and use the data that's in the open URL to try to search for that publication using just that information. If you can't find it on the vendor site, see if providing additional information will work in order to find the article there. If the article doesn't display on the vendor site when you search for it, you can contact the vendor directly to ask why the article is missing from their site. If the article is in the vendor site when you search for it there, you can try to see if there's something incorrect in the open URL. So for example, perhaps there's an incorrect page number for the article in the open URL. Or if more information needs to perhaps be added to the open URL. If the information in the source open URL is incorrect or incomplete, contact the vendor, the source vendor, as there may be changes that they need to make on their side. If the information in the source open URL is correct and complete, contact Ex Libris support, as we may need to make some changes on our side. Users also have the option to report a broken link when they use the SFX menu. So if the user clicks on a target link or on the Go button in the SFX menu, and this would be for a target that has either full text or abstracts or table of contents. When they go back to the SFX menu, they will then see a report broken link next to the target. And so if the target link is broken, the user can just click on the report broken link in order to report it. And let me actually show you a live example of this. So we have an example of an SFX menu here. I click on the link Metapress Baywood Publishing Company. And let's say, for instance, that it does open in a new window. And let's say, for instance, that I don't get the article I'm looking for, or I get a article cannot be displayed. I'm going to go ahead and close this second screen. And notice that when I go back to the SFX menu, I now have a report broken link that displays next to the target. So if I'm not able to access the article from Metapress Baywood Publishing Company as a user, I can click on that report broken link in order to report it. When users click on that link, the information about the target and target URL is sent to Ex Libris, and it's used to analyze and improve target linking. Additionally, you can configure SFX to send a copy of the report to a predefined email address. So perhaps you or your library is aware whenever this link is clicked. By default, the report broken link option is active in the SFX menu, but it is possible to disable it via a configuration file on the server for each local instance. More information is in the SFX General User's Guide. Let's go back to the slides. And let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little about debugging in SFX. SFX comes with a debugging tool, and this is a little more advanced functionality, but we will cover it a little bit more in depth in the system administration session. For now, I'll just point out that it is here and available. When the debugging tool is turned on, it allows you to see the information that's being sent. Basically, you'll see the code and the text for everything that happens behind the scenes. So in this example, if debug is turned on, notice it is turned off right now. So if I clicked on for each of these, I can see behind the scenes all of the activity that's going on for the SFX menu. You'll want to restrict debugging to your own IP, and notice that there is a field here to restrict debugging to the following IP addresses. And that's so you can test in your live environment without impacting what your users see. In particular, so they won't see this debug information when they use the SFX menu. There's more information on the debug tool in the SFX Advanced Users Guide, and again, we'll also cover this a little bit more in depth in the system administration session. If you are seeing issues, you can report them at any time to the support team. There is a contact support link in the SFX Admin Center in the troubleshooting section so that you can easily log a support case from there. And just going back to debugging for just a moment, under troubleshooting, here's the link for the debug tool. But again, going back to contact support now, here's a link where you can very easily click on from the Admin Center contact support, and it will open up the support portal, and you can log a case from there. Before you're transitioned to support, you'll be guided through the process of using the XLibris support portal to create cases. Another way to access the XLibris support portal is through the Customer Center, or by using the direct support portal link, and I have that listed here. When you log a support case, there's some information that you'll want to include, which will be helpful to the support team. It may take a few more minutes to put this information together, but it is really information that should be readily accessible to you. If you think about how things can go wrong, you can see that everything that we're asking for is helping us to find out what's gone wrong, and will also help us fix it quickly. So we can do that hopefully without a lot of back and forth. In the support case, it will be helpful to include, first of all, the steps to reproduce the issue, the expected behavior versus what's happening. And you don't have to go into a lot of detail here, but if we know what you're trying to do, it gives us some context. The citation information, if that's applicable, so the article name, the journal or book name, the ISSN or ISBN, if that's applicable, the date. This is all information that should be available in the citation that you're looking at and that you might be experiencing some issues with. Don't worry about digging around for this information if it's not there. The vendor names of the source and the target, so where you're starting from and where you're trying to go. Your coverage for the publication, and this should be available in the A to Z list, or if you look at the object in the SFX Admin Center. The source and target open URLs and the URL of the SFX menu. If that's available to you, that will be great to provide as well. And if you provide the debugging text, it will also contain this information. Screenshots, if it helps describe what you're seeing. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and it's especially helpful if the support team is unable to produce the issue. And then additionally, it's helpful to include only one issue per support case. It's tempting to include several issues in one support case, but in actuality, they may be very different issues that need to go to different teams to resolve. So it's better to have each issue in a separate support case in case they do end up being very different issues. This is an example of the information you would include in a support case, and you can see that the steps to reproduce are very brief. So I went here, I clicked this, I didn't get that. The expected behavior can be just a simple statement, and so on. I won't go into a lot of detail on this slide, but it is available for your reference in the slide presentation that accompanies this recording. While we're on the topic of creating support cases, in addition to logging support cases for any issues that you're experiencing, you can also log a support case to request that a new target or target service or object be added to the SFX knowledge base. Before you submit a case for a new target, however, we do recommend that you first search for it to see if it's already been requested by another customer. And I'm actually going to show you how to do this. I'm going to go back over to our Internet Explorer browser here, and let's look at, this is the Customer Center that you see here, and to log cases you would click on the Ex Libris Support Portal. Again, realizing that you can also get to this very easily from the SFX Admin Center. While this is loading, I'll go back there. In the troubleshooting area, Contact Support will take you to the same place, which is our support portal. In the support portal, and I have probably access to a lot more than you would see, but you would click on this KB Items link, Knowledge Base Items. That will display a list of targets that have already been requested by customers. And as you look through the list, you can click on Promote, this Promote button, for any targets that you too would also like to see added to the SFX knowledge base. If you're not able to find your requested new target in the KB items list, then you would submit a support case. Note that you can also, going back to the SFX Admin Center, also use the knowledge base change requests area in the troubleshooting section of the Admin Center to request a new target, new service, or object. And just to show you briefly what that looks like, I've clicked on knowledge base change request under troubleshooting. Contact name, you would select target, and if the target doesn't already exist, you would click on add new target. And then you would select which category. Is it a target, a new source, a new object portfolio, or a new object, and so on. And when you're finished, you would click the send button. While I'm seeing the description field here, let me just mention that the type of information that the knowledge base team would like to receive for new target requests are, first of all, the name of the requested target or collection, the provider or vendor, the type of material that's contained in the target. So does it contain journals or books and so on. Just a very brief description of the target, perhaps what type of information it contains, a link to the vendor's website, and then a link to the title list for the target if that's available. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and click on Cancel. And let's go back to our slides. This brings us to the end of our session. So in this session, we covered how to troubleshoot issues such as missing or broken target links in the SFX menu, and how to use the OpenURL generator tool to see the metadata in the OpenURL, in particular to see if any metadata might be missing or incorrect in the OpenURL. We looked at how to debug issues or where to debug issues using the SFX debug tool, and again, we'll talk more about that in the system administration session. And then we also covered how to log a support case for any issues, or to log a support case for any new target requests, and what information to include in the case that will be helpful to the support team. This is a list of documents that will provide more information on the topics that we covered in this session. All are accessible on the Ex Libris Documentation Center. More detailed troubleshooting information, including how to use the OpenURL generator tool and the debugging tool, can be found in the General User's Guide and the Advanced User's Guide. If you're interested in the OpenURL structure for targets, or what metadata elements are included in the OpenURL that's passed by sources, both the source configuration guide and the target configuration guides will be helpful for that information. And then lastly, for more information on the support portal itself and how to log a support case, there is documentation in the cross-product area of the Documentation Center. And the path to find that documentation is listed here. Thanks for joining me.